Look for the No Fakes Pledge sign. It means that the retailer has promised to sell only genuine goods and you can shop there with peace of mind. Let's support the No Fakes Pledge scheme.
呢度有齊晒我想買嘅嘢啊！
我哋呢度仲有正版正貨承諾標誌添。
Television's oldest teenagers are back.
Gentlemen, the time has come.
If 10-year-olds could drive, they would love this.
It is a rampant rabbit!
What have we learned? Really?
Starting Monday, Top Gear Season 20 at 9:35 on Pearl.
It was 20 years ago. Ever since, time has never been so magical.
The time now is 11:40. The Time Check was brought to you by Chopin.
MTRC deny link to Jay Walder going and express rail delay. Corruption trial involving former official and Sun Hoon Kai brothers begins, and Hong Kong hit by another black rainstorm. Good evening and welcome. The MTR Corporation has denied that CEO Jay Walder's departure next year is linked to the delay to the local section of its high-speed rail project. Lawmakers continue to pile on the pressure on MTRC today, insisting Walder resign and forgo his bonus because of the fiasco. Ronnie Samtani reports.
MTRC Chairman Raymond Chan apologized to shareholders over a 2-year delay of the high-speed rail project at the railway company's annual general meeting this morning.
I also regret any impact that you feel this issue may have had on you, our shareholders. The full extent of the delay was only understood at the most senior level in early April. And so our 2013 annual report, prepared earlier this year, still referred to a 2015 target.
The MTRC's chief executive officer, Jay Walder, refused to say whether he would step down because the local section of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express rail link will not begin services next year as originally planned. But during the shareholders' meeting, Chan explained that Walder will not be renewing his contract once it expires in August next year. The MTRC insists that Walder's departure has nothing to do with the delay in the rail link.
This was a mutual agreement that we had reached last year. The contract was renewed in August of 2013, and it fit, to be frank, it fit our family purposes, and that's why we wanted to do it.
A global search for a new CEO will start soon. Frederick Ma heads the independent committee that will be reviewing the management of the MTR's high-speed railway project. The committee will have its first meeting tomorrow. Several political groups protested outside this morning's meeting, demanding that Walder resign. Labour Party Vice Chairman Tam Chun Yin said Walder should leave now instead of waiting until 2015. And Michael Tian, chairman of the LegCo Railway Subcommittee, said Walder needs to be held accountable for his actions.
Based on the recent series of incidents at the MTR operating level in terms of the delay and whatnot, and the fact that the express rail link is now delayed by 2 years, that alone should cause his entire bonus to be withheld. So that very unprofessional action also needs to be addressed. And I see no way other than a cut in his pay for the remaining part of the term or an early termination of his contract.
Meanwhile, Secretary for Transport and Housing Anthony Cheung refused to speak about Walder. Cheung stressed that steps will be taken to strengthen the MTR Corporation board and that the government will nominate additional board members. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
The high-profile corruption trial involving former Chief Secretary Raphael Hui and Sun Hung Kai Properties joint chairman Thomas and Raymond Kwok has begun, with all defendants pleading not guilty. The charges involve $34 million in cash payments and advantages, not $34 billion, as we reported earlier in our news at 7:30. Diane To has more on a court case that's got the whole town talking.
Raphael Hui, a former Chief Secretary for Administration and the second in command in the SAR government, is the highest-ranking ex-government official to date to stand trial at the High Court. Arriving amid a flurry of media, the other four defendants include Thomas Kwok and his younger brother Raymond, joint chairman of Sun Hung Kai Properties, as well as the real estate giant's executive director Thomas Chan and former senior vice president of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Francis Kwan. The high-profile case saw the courtroom packed with legal teams and reporters. For those who could not get in, a simultaneous broadcast of the public hearing was arranged in the lobby outside. The prosecution is putting forward 8 charges surrounding misconduct in public office and conspiring to offer advantages to a public servant, all of them involving Hui. The 5 defendants all pleaded not guilty to the charges. To ensure a fair trial, Justice Andrew McRae restricted media reports to only the basic facts, such as the names and occupations of defendants and the charges involved, until further notice. The trial is scheduled to last 70 days. Diane To, TVB News.
Well, as you've probably noticed, heavy showers have been lashing Hong Kong tonight, prompting the observatory to raise the black rainstorm warning at one point. The alert has been downgraded to red. Earlier, commuters who left work without umbrellas this evening struggled to get home without getting soaked. The observatory replaced the red rainstorm warning with the black signal at 10:30 p.m. Drivers have been advised to take extra care and caution on the roads during the heavy downpour. Thailand's Anti-Graft Commission has decided to indict ousted Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra over charges of dereliction of duty in overseeing a controversial rice subsidy program. The decision comes a day after the Constitutional Court ousted Yingluck and 9 cabinet members for abuse of power. Thai police investigate a grenade attack at the home of a Constitutional Court judge early this morning. The judge belongs to the court which ousted Yingluck Shinawatra and 9 of her ministers from office Wednesday after finding her guilty of abusing power. A bank and a research facility were also targeted overnight. No one was hurt in the attacks, but they underscore the deep political divide in Thailand. For opposition protesters, however, Yingluck's removal is reason to celebrate.
Today, I think we're just trying to push forward and trying to ask everybody to accept the court's decision and push forward for a new government so that we can push forward all the necessary reforms.
I think that many people will see this verdict today as a power play, a way of getting rid of Yingluck, but certainly many people will now see this not as legalistic and as an enforcement of the rule of law, but rather a game of politics.
And Yingluck's political troubles got even worse today. Thailand's National Anti-Corruption Commission has voted unanimously to indict her for a controversial rice subsidy scheme. The program was a flagship policy of Yingluck's administration, but it lost billions of dollars. If impeached by the Senate and found guilty, Yingluck would be barred from politics for 5 years.
As for a real democratically elected government, we don't know if elections will now take place in July. But if there isn't a proper government in place when the next fiscal year begins in October, what's going to happen to the rudderless, pilotless economy?
With more uncertainty looming, both pro- and anti-government rallies are being planned in Bangkok, raising fears of more clashes and more violence. Elsewhere, pro-Russian insurgents say they will go ahead this weekend with a referendum on succession from Ukraine, despite an appeal from Russian President Vladimir Putin to delay the vote. Still, Putin has ordered that Russian troops pull back from their positions along the border with Ukraine. Alan Buchnia with more.
It was the first sign the Kremlin leader has given that he would not endorse the results of the referendum currently scheduled for May 11th. And in what could be a breakthrough in the worst crisis between the East and West since the Cold War, Putin said he's pulled back his tens of thousands of troops who were posted near the border with Ukraine. While welcoming the news, the U.S. State Department said it still has no evidence of a troop pullback. It also greeted Putin's call to postpone the referendum with skepticism.
We've made clear that we believe the proposed May 11th referendum are both illegal and illegitimate, and we need to see more from President Putin than simply calling for it to be postponed.
In eastern Ukraine, preparations for the referendum continue with mixed reaction to Putin's call for a delay. Separatist leaders in Donetsk said they will discuss a postponement at a meeting later today, but a group in Luhansk rejected the Russian leader's appeal. And in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, preparations continue for a presidential election on May 25th, something Putin yesterday called a step in the right direction, a comment welcomed by the U.S. State Department.
And we would call on Russia to use its influence with the militant groups to ensure a safe and secure environment for all Ukrainians to cast their ballots on May 25th.
Putin also called on Ukraine's military to halt its operations against the pro-Russian separatists. At the same time, Ukraine's acting Prime Minister, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, visited a military camp in Slavyansk, where anti-insurgent operations have been taking place. He called on the separatists to surrender their weapons. The counteroffensive has so far had limited success. Troops in the eastern port of Mariupol briefly captured the rebel-held city hall, but quickly abandoned it, leaving the building back in the hands of the separatists. At least 35 people have been killed in the fighting between the Ukrainian army and the rebels. Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
To Africa now, and Premier Li Keqiang has offered China's help to rescue more than 200 schoolgirls kidnapped 3 weeks ago in northeastern Nigeria. Li made the offer in a meeting with Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Nigeria. Li says China will offer any useful satellite and intelligence information to Nigeria's security forces. The offer comes as residents in the Nigerian capital staged another protest demanding action from their government over the kidnappings. France and Britain are also offering help. The United States says Nigeria has accepted its offer of assistance, but the State Department says it has no plans to carry out a rescue mission. An outspoken journalist in Beijing is being detained by authorities accused of leaking state secrets to a website abroad. Jenny Lam reports.
According to the official Xinhua news agency, police in Beijing placed the prominent government critic Gao Yu under criminal detention on April the 24th. The 70-year-old is accused of illegally obtaining a confidential document and sending an electronic copy of it to a website abroad in June last year. State television showed a woman, identified as Gao, but with her face blurred out, making a confession. I believe what I've done has violated the law and harmed the interests of the country, the woman said. What I've done is extremely wrong, and I sincerely take a lesson from this, and I admit my guilt, she added. Reports say Gao Yu obtained through a third party a document issued by the General Office of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. According to DWNews.com, the document was issued to cadres around the country and specifically mentioned that 7 issues must not be mentioned in public. Those include Western-style democracy, universal values, press freedom, civil society, and other ideological concepts. The content of the document was published in Der Spiegel in Germany, the New York Times, and the BBC. Gao Yu is a veteran journalist who used to work for China News Service. She became deputy chief editor of Economics Weekly in 1989, but the magazine was later banned. She was arrested on the eve of the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown. In 1993, Gao was sentenced to 6 years in prison for leaking state secrets. In recent years, she has been an outspoken critic of politics on the mainland. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Greg So has dismissed an apparent protest in which he received packages with feces in them. Trevor Lee has details.
The Secretary for Commerce